We'll get into the lesson today. So, you guys have heard me talk about your company, and it's what problem do you solve, and how do you do it uniquely? That's essentially it. I've talked about this a lot. Basically, business, your software, your app, your platform, you even have a service, consulting, courses, whatever it is, brick and mortar. Doesn't really matter what it is. Essentially, what you want to do is you say, okay, what is the problem that I solve? Who do I solve it for? That's your customer avatar. And then how do you do it uniquely? And we've talked about this before. It's essentially your unique value proposition, UVP. Some people call it unique selling point, but I like unique value proposition. And what I want to introduce today is this new idea, which for software and startups is very important. It's unique feature or minimum feature. So here's the way I want you to think about it. So you have a problem that you solve, and there's a lot of different competitors that solve the same problem. Solve same problem, probably for same avatar, the same customer base. And you can probably name them. If you can't name them, you should do a little research and figure out, hey, who are we actually trying to help here? And let's say it's a pizza joint. You say, all right, we do delivery in 30 minutes. That's Domino's. We are the healthy place. We're the Michelin star fancy place where you can go on a date. We're the one that has all the best wine, whatever it may be. So there's some kind of thing that makes you different than all the other pizza places. So whatever software, whatever app, whatever platform that you're building that already exists in the market, firstly, step one is know who they are. Step two, figure out what their unique value proposition is. Why do they exist versus someone else? What makes them different? It could be pricing. It doesn't really matter what it is, but it's something. And then you have to say, where's my little part of the market? So you've probably seen something called TAM, the total addressable market, total addressable market. And so what this means is essentially if you add up all the people that buy everything in this market, how much is that total market? So it could be $1 billion. It could be everyone that buys pizza in a 5 square mile radius is probably going to be smaller. But at some point, you have this thing called market share. So let's think of like soda. So the market share for soda is distributed amongst all of the main players, and then there's smaller players that take a little bit of a bite. And so let's say this is Coca-Cola, this is maybe Pepsi, maybe this is Fanta if you're in Europe or something. And then you have smaller players, so Dr. Pepper, whatever it may be. And they're taking a market share. And once you get to be a big company, what you're trying to do is you're trying to take a larger market share. So if Coca-Cola goes from this to this, their CEO probably gets a $10 million bonus, even though it looks the same, but this little difference here could be billions of dollars for the company. So you have this total addressable market, everyone that's buying this product, every single dollar that's spent on this product, this problem, that's another way to think about it, this problem. And then you have all the competitors that already exist in this space. So you got to know who's your Coca-Cola, who's your Pepsi, who's your Fanta, who's your Dr. Pepper. And then you say, oh, I'm the cool one for Gen Z and I use honey instead of sugar. So that's going to be my new soda company, and it's called Gen Z Soda. And I'm going to try to enter the market with my unique value proposition. So when you're building software, what you want to do when you're launching is you want to, instead of thinking, what are this million features that people could have, you want to say, what are the expectations? What is like the standard? The standard, let's say you're doing phones or something. Let's say you're manufacturing phones. The standard is that I can have a phone call, there's internet, I can probably access apps, and then it has some kind of camera. Let's say these are, if I don't have this, I essentially don't have a phone. So this is the standard. Everyone is going to expect this. So soda, what do people expect? They expect it to be fizzy, they expect it to be sweet, and that's the standard. So now, given these standards in the industry, given the standards of your competitors, if you don't have these standards, people are probably not going to buy. Okay, so this is the basics, the minimum thing that you need to do in order to have people basically happy. But then, and you may have a whole list of features, we're different because we're this and this, but there's going to be some kind of unique value proposition. But this is turned into a feature. So there's some feature about your software, about your app. There's something that's different. It'd be interesting if I could use a case study if anyone wants to be. So let's say you have an app for, let's say, weather. So if you have a weather app, what are people going to expect? They're going to expect that they're going to be able to see the weather and it's going to have GPS, so it's going to know where they are, but then there's also going to be some kind of location, something like that. So if I don't have this on my weather app as the basic features, no one's going to buy it, or they're going to buy it and they're going to cancel right away. But maybe the thing that makes me different than the weather app or weather.com or whatever it may be is that there's, let's say, an AI component where you can talk to it and you can tell it your plans for the day, or even better, maybe it syncs up with your calendar and it gives you advice on whether or not you should wear certain things at certain times of the day. So let's say that's your unique value proposition. I don't think that's necessarily a great idea, but you get the idea. There's something that's different. So all of them, they do the basics. But what we do is we have an AI component that implements with my calendar and also integrates with fashion, like what I should buy. So let's say that there's a feature where in the beginning I can take a bunch of photos of my wardrobe and then it'll tell me what I should wear based on the weather. So none of the other apps do that. That's my unique feature. So I'm not saying this is a good idea, but off the top of my head, here's this one thing that makes you different. So it's, let's say, the fashion suggestions. So that's the thing. That's going to be my ad, especially if you live in some place where the weather changes every couple hours. It's going to do fashion suggestions based on your wardrobe, based on the weather. So that's my thing. And we call it the weather dress app or something. I don't know. This is the whole lesson if you just pay attention to this. So eventually you're going to have all sorts of different features, but when you're first getting started, you want to identify the unique value proposition of your app or your software. It usually has one core feature that differentiates it. It's a differentiation between that one and all the other ones. And what you want to do, this is actually going to be an interesting lesson here, is you want to build your onboarding around your unique feature. So what do I mean by onboarding? If you remember from Saturday's class, we had this advanced lesson on your cost per view, then your cost per click, your cost per lead, or your cost per download, depending on whether you have an app or a software, then your cost of acquiring a paying customer, then how much they pay you right off the bat, which is your average order value, and then you reduce churn with lifetime value. So if you can watch the replay of this on launchyourbusiness.ai or in Discord on the training, but this is what I talked about on Saturday. So this is like the math of your business. And what I want to highlight here is that the big game is actually lifetime value. The game is lifetime value. So let's say that you charge, let's say $19 a month or whatever your software is. So the odds of you being able to, unless you're going viral or you're like great on social media or you already have this huge email list, the odds of you being able to acquire a customer at $19 a month is probably pretty low. So let's say an average paying customer is like $100 CPA, cost per acquisition, or some people call it CAC, your cost of acquiring a customer. So how do you have a good business if your CPA is $100, but you're only getting paid $19 a month? What do you think? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Pay $100 to acquire a customer. They only pay me $19 right away. I have a couple options here. I can have some upsells right away. So I could have the even more premium membership to increase the cash flow, increase the average order value. But what's the real game? What are we trying to do here? So $100 CPA, $19 a month. What you want to do is you want to reduce something called churn. So churn is basically cancel. So you have your Netflix subscription and then you cancel it. You're churning, meaning you're canceling. And what that does is it reduces the lifetime value. So your monthly revenue per customer times the number of months that they stay with you equals your lifetime value. So the number of months that they stay with you is obviously based on the quality of what you're doing, the quality of your software or your app. But I'll tell you this, the real secret, and not a lot of people talk about this, but the real secret is actually the first impression. How many of you have had a software or an app that you downloaded and your first impression of it was really good? You thought, oh, this is really good. I'm actually liking this. And then you don't cancel it, even if you haven't used it for 3 or 4 months, because your first impression was good and you think, oh, it's actually my fault. It's not the app's fault. It's not the software's fault. It's my fault that I haven't used it. I just haven't habitualized it. I haven't used it enough. but I know it's really valuable. And for the price, it's worth the hassle of not canceling it in case one day I come back to it. This happens all the time, whether it's like a streaming service or an app on your phone. And then a lot of times what ends up happening is you might have bought a yearly subscription and then the yearly comes back and you're like, oh my God, I forgot that I had the yearly subscription. So that happens a lot. Okay? This actually happens with BookDaddy, my software. So there's a lot of people that will come in and they'll use the software right away and they're like, oh wow, I got a chapter of my book, I got an outline of it. Ooh, this is really exciting, this is amazing, I love it. And then what happens is they get busy with their life, but then they have a couple chapters inside the software and they really enjoyed it. So they may not use it for 2 months or 3 months, and then they come back and then they make a book cover and they're like, oh, I really like this book cover. So then they think, okay, so even if they're not using it daily, they still really like what they're using. And so then they won't churn. But this only works if you have really good onboarding. And by onboarding, it means essentially the first thing that happens. Have you ever gone onto an app? And most apps, for example, will look like this. There's a little menu at the bottom, and then there's a menu at the top. These are essentially the features. Okay? You might have 6 to 8 different little pages in your app. This is where the magic happens. This is where the videos are. This is where the AI is. This is where you're actually interacting inside of the app, the core space of the app. These are just toggles between different features. Have you ever noticed that when you first download an app, usually you don't see this? What is usually something like this, where it'll be like a question with an onboarding buttons, like a questionnaire, or you can click different things like, are you this, are you that? Almost like a little quiz. And then what it does is it redirects you to the very first thing, the first feature that's relevant to you. It gathers some information about you to get your profile, and then it immediately pushes you to the first feature. And that first feature should be the thing that makes your app or your software unique, because now the person has experienced within just a few minutes of downloading the software, downloading the app, the kind of magic trick, right? Unique value proposition is your magic trick. And whatever that magic trick is, you want to lead with it. If you're playing poker or playing a sport, you want to lean into the thing that makes you unique, that makes you better than everyone else. If you're like a tennis player, Wimbledon's happening right now, and you have a really good forehand, you want to use your forehand as best as you possibly can. You want to hide your backhand. So it's the same thing that applies when starting a new software or a new app. Whatever this feature is that makes you unique, okay? So again, I'm giving you the big why here. But if business is you're solving a problem for someone and you do it in a unique way, we call that unique value proposition. But how do we turn that into something solid? We decide, oh, there's a feature that my software or my app has that all of the other ones don't. What's the minimum version, the minimum viable feature that will I show people right away that I'm different and that's why they should use me instead of all the competitors. And whatever that is, you want to turn that into an onboarding so that when people experience your app, the first minute, the first 2 minutes of using the software or whatever it may be, you want to get them a quick win. If you remember when Facebook was first starting on, they famously said you needed 3 friends. I think it was 3 friends within 3 days or something like that. The numbers might not be exact, but that was the idea, is that if I can get you to have 3 friends or 5 friends or whatever it may be within 3 days, you'll keep on coming back, keep on coming back. So their whole product team for the first couple of years was actually really focused on that first 5 minute experience to connect with people's contacts and find those contacts so that they could click a button and automatically friend request everyone in their contacts so that they would have 3, 5, 10 friends right away. And now they have friends, now they can interact, now they can see what people are doing. And they realize that if people didn't have that onboarding experience, then a lot of people would cancel or wouldn't use it. So this is just a thought experiment for you. This is obviously not a technical class. Each person is going to be a little bit different. Your software is going to be different, but really try to identify whatever your features are. So you've seen me in previous classes where I'm like, okay, what's the menu on the side? You've probably seen me talk about this before. Yeah, there's like always like a menu on the side, and especially in the software, there'll be like a menu, and then each menu item has like its own. This might be the main feature, this might be like a profile, this might be some admin thing, whatever it may be. And if you click on the feature on the left, it'll open up whatever the actual software is on the right. This is like standard way that most softwares are done. Even if you think about even Famous, like how does Famous go? There's an onboarding. Think about Famous. So what makes Famous unique? Okay. So you think about what makes Famous unique? What makes Famous unique? Its competitors are like Cursor or Lovable or Bolt or that sort of thing. But those are much more advanced in terms of the coding. So they don't connect to the backend quite as easily. And they require you to understand coding at a much more advanced level. They're not really for people that are more visual. And they also don't have crypto, and they also don't have native app store for Apple. Okay. So what does it do? Think about what's the onboarding for Famous? You type something in, it's very simple, and you just click one of these buttons. And the default is web app because that's what most people do. And that's your onboarding. Your onboarding is literally just type something in. And they even have little prompts where it's, oh, build a fitness app or build a software for businesses or build a landing page for my landscaping business or whatever. So it could be literally as simple as clicking a button. That's how simple the onboarding can be for Famous. It's click, and then what happens? You're immediately in to the user experience, and their user experience for Famous is essentially like this. This is like how, if you want to think about it, they have a header with some settings here where you can find the settings. And then this is where you actually interact with Famous over here. And then this is where the magic happens. So most software is organized this way, where there's like something that's happening on the left. There's a place where you actually are working. And then there's a little header with settings. And what they do is they say, oh, my onboarding is so easy and that all you have to do is type in a couple sentences and immediately you're going to see the magic trick, which is very different than the magic trick of like Bolt or Lovable or Cursor, because if you guys have ever used it, it looks like the code. So it'll just look like a bunch of code. And then you can change it into like CSS and you can actually design things. But mostly the value proposition is for developers. So what is Famous? And then you also have Google's kind of coming up with a competitor or Figma's coming up with a competitor, but they don't actually write the code. So they can help you with the visual. They can actually have you build it. So think about the Venn diagram. It's visual, and then there's intuitive. I'm just like talking about Famous, for example. Just think about it. This is meta. And then there's coding. And intuitive is another way to say like easy to use. So there's a bunch of competitors out there, but what Famous does is it combines the three. So Famous is like right here in the middle, which is why people love it because it does like more advanced coding, but it's also visually very easy. And then it's also intuitive for beginners. So how do you, if that's the unique value proposition, it's not going to highlight the coding necessarily. It's not going to highlight just the visual, and it's not going to just be so easy and so simple that you can't do anything advanced with it. So what they do is they say, okay, let's make it really easy for onboarding. And then you can toggle back and forth between the code and the visual. So their unique feature for Famous, even the way that they do it is they make the onboarding really easy so that you can experience a unique feature within seconds. So you got to think the same thing. I can't do this for you, but you have to deconstruct your own software, your own app, and think, how do I onboard people so that they're going to feel my unique feature within the first couple seconds? It might be that they have to fill out a little quiz. It might be that they have to maybe start interacting with whatever AI thing you're building right away. Maybe, if it's a fitness tracking app or something, maybe instead of planning out their entire 30-day thing, maybe it's just, hey, what are your goals for today? Answer a couple questions, and then all of a sudden, bam, you're ready to go. So this is the lesson for the day. So what I want you guys to take away from this is that to reduce churn, which is the most important thing in making your business model, okay, to reduce churn, you need good onboarding, a good first impression. But what is good onboarding is showing the unique feature, which is like your magic quickly. So you can't do that unless you know what your unique feature is, which means that you got to do a little research of your competitors and say, hey, why does this company exist? Why does my software exist? Because if there's a bunch of other softwares that are already better than whatever you're building, you got to find your little niche. You got to find your little place in the market so that when you're advertising, people aren't thinking, oh, yeah, this is just like something else. And a lot of the companies that you're competing with, they might have more money than you. Maybe they're more incumbents. They've been around in the market more. They have a bigger brand. They have more trust. So you got to have this unique feature. So think about it. Really think about it. What is my unique feature? How do I get people to onboard right away so that they can experience the unique feature? And then also a little bit more advanced is if you do this, it makes your advertising a lot easier. Okay, cool. We'll talk to you guys on Saturday. The feature is good. Demo is good. That's essentially like your VSL. But more important is you want them to experience it. So definitely you should have trainings, you should have demos, you should have all that kind of stuff, but you also want to have them experience it. It's one thing to watch a commercial about a car, it's another thing to take a joyride. You guys can go to launch your business. If you click on learn, you'll see everything. I put up all my videos there. And then I also put up on Discord. If you go to the training section in Discord, I put them up there as well. And if you guys want to work with me, you can always schedule a call with me on my website. Good luck, guys. We'll see you on Saturday.